Hey, I'm Matthew from the Effekt podcast, and we've got a panel here today of the great and the good from all round the gaming world, from across the Atlantic, even of people that have been involved with some of our best loved, but also slightly scary game worlds. Worlds like Glorantha, which have been around as long as I've been role playing, the World of Darkness, the Rokugan, the world of the Legend of the Five Rings, and the Third Horizon, which I know quite a lot about because I do a podcast about it. But we often get asked, where do I start in the Third Horizon? And I always feel like replying, first of all, well, the Third Horizon is easy. That's baby food. And we've got here four people to talk about all of those things, and I'll get you all to introduce yourselves in turn. But let's start with you, Jeff, who you're now in charge of the granddaddy of all fantasy worlds.
That's right. I'm Jeff Richard. I'm the chair of Chaosium Inc., and I'm also the creative director for Chaosium. We're the publishers of Call of Cthulhu, Pendragon, and RuneQuest. And here I'm talking about RuneQuest and Glorantha, the big daddy of fantasy settings. And do you want me to give a little bit of background on
Give us a
how
little bit
big
of
of a
background
big
about
daddy
that
it
and the
is?
reason why we should play in Glorantha.
Okay, Glorantha has been in publication since 1975 with White Bear, Red Moon. It came out 3 years later with RuneQuest. It has pretty much, from out of RuneQuest and Glorantha, it spawned off Call of Cthulhu and Pendragon. It has been done as a narrative game with HeroQuest, which Robin Laws and I did. It's been done as more of a traditional classic fantasy RPG with 13th Age in Glorantha, which was done with Rob Hinzo and Jonathan Tweet. It's been in computer games, board games, you name it, and it is up there with basically Tecmo for the most in-depth, deepest and broadest of RPG settings. And I'd argue it's even, M.A. Barker created a work of genius with Tecmo, but Glorantha kept creating and growing for the last 45 years. And I'd say it's pretty much, the heaviest and deepest of all the fantasy IPs out there. I think it's the best. I think everybody else in this panel may have their own favorites, but it is definitely the big daddy, though, of them all.
Brilliant. The Big Daddy game and the game world. And then moving on to a more recent entrant, but still much loved. Still a number of games or a number of titles related to that world. And that's the World of Darkness. Now, B. Dave, you are an experienced explorer of the World of Darkness and somewhat of a celebrity vampire as Victor. But tell us more about you and your game world.
Thanks for having me here. I love the fact that we're like, it's a new entrant and it's like been 30 years. But I mean, I guess that's how high the bar is set now. B. Dave Walters. I am not an employee of the World of Darkness or Paradox Interactive. I'm just blessed to get to play a lot in their sandbox. You probably know me as I do play Victor Temple, the undisputed Baron of the Valley on Vampire the Masquerade LA by Night. I also Storytell, Long Beach by Night, and Anarchs of New York. I think I've probably run more games of V5 than anyone else alive. Jason Carl and I talk about this because of my Patreon, I'm closing in on like 400 games, maybe like 10 to 12 a week for a year. So wow. I guess we're 4-ish hundred. The World of Darkness, not to dive too deep into it right now, is this world. It is the world you already live in, except it's all the things that are being kept from you. That vampires are real, werewolves, mages, wraiths, changelings, fae, everything that goes bump in the night, and it's fantastic. And it has kind of entered into a new renaissance in the last couple of years or so with the the publishing of Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. It'd been about 15 years with nothing new in there, although Onyx Path definitely kept putting out content and some other indie producers, but the World of Darkness has come back in force recently, and I've just been lucky to be able to ride that wave.
Cool. Thanks very much, B. Dave. And Julie, yours is the next oldest world, and it's one that I have a lot of love for, although I found it relatively recently, about 5 or 6 years ago. What can you tell me about Rokugan?
Hi everyone, I am Angeli, Geek Girl Bookworm online everywhere. I'm also the marketing and publicity manager for Aconite Books, which is a new publishing imprint from Asmodee Entertainment. We write novels set in the IPs of board games. So L5R and Rokugan are one of our IPs that we do write cool stories in. That's me. So Rokugan is a sort of feudal Japan that takes a lot of influence from other East Asian cultures such as China, Mongolia. It was originally by Aldrich Entertainment Games in 1995 and was picked up by FFG in 2015. FFG also a sister partner of Asmodee as a family. It's the world itself is the basis for the collectible card game, the living card game, and the RPG. So it has huge fan base from different types of players. The thing that I really like about it is that currently what the fans do within tournaments can affect the canonical sort of world. So depending on what the players achieve within a tournament can change the history and the timeline that's currently going on within the RPGs and within the other card games. And also at Aconite, we're sort of working in that as well to try and keep timelines going as they change. Yeah, I think I really, really like the system. I really like the world. And the reason that I like it is that unlike sort of other games where it's more adventure, epic heroes, this you can do a lot with like courtly deception and diplomacy and things. So you have the option to have characters that are very sneaky and very clever, and rather than big action heroes. And I think that appeals to a lot of people who maybe aren't sort of in the fantasy sort of realm of role playing.
Yeah. And the other thing I like about it, somebody mentioned to me that it's a bit like D&D, except you're all playing paladins. And I love the fact that everybody's got this code of honor, and the conflict often comes from wanting to do the right thing, but knowing that you can't do the right thing, or vice versa.
Yeah, and you have to be within a particular clan. So there's 8 great clans, and they all have their own rules and ways of acting around each other and within situations.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Anne Julie. We've got a little bit of time now for Matthias. Sorry, I'm not leaving you much time, but introduce yourself, Matthias, and introduce for us the Third Horizon.
Yeah, Matthias Jonsson Hake is my name, and I am a very proud member of the Swedish game publisher Fria Ligan, or Free League. What I do, I manage 2 of our brands, Symbaroum and Coriolis, and I also do a lot of writing and editing. And well, my primary focus, you could say, is the setting design and also maybe adventure design. Anyway, my little baby, the Third Horizon, is but 14 or 15 years old. It was introduced in a Swedish game, published in Swedish only, called Coriolis in 2008, I believe. And it didn't see a translation into English until 10 years later at the hands of Free League. And well, I don't know, you wanted me to keep it short, so it's a science fiction setting. It's often described in terms of an arabesque space opera. And if you want one reason why anyone should consider playing in the Third Horizon, I would say that its depths when it comes to conflicting morals, politics, and in the end factions is should be a huge draw for anyone considering investing the time to play in the Third Horizon. But in this, I may as well ask you for some hints as to why people should play it, because I know you love it.
Well, yeah. So obviously we love it. We started off our podcast, Effekt podcast, was originally called the Coriolis Effect because we fell in love with that world so much. I think one of the reasons why we like it is the mechanical idea of prayer, that you can pray to the icons in this world and they will answer you with an extra roll. Hooray! And particularly what I love about that is if you pray in advance of something, you get an extra dice bonus. So it's better to pray in advance. My players are always going off, and they're always going off to find a chapel, because if you pray in a chapel in advance of any action, you think you're going into a fight, so you want to go and pray to the judge or whatever, then you go and pray to the judge in a chapel. And it's just, sorry, I've played Pendragon, Jeff, for 30 years. And I'm meant to be a Christian knight. I don't think once have I ever thought to myself, oh, I must go and pray in the chapel. And so that's one of the reasons why I find this game so attractive. But it's not about me, it's about new players. And one of the things that I have heard from our audience, we run a podcast, we produce a show every 3 weeks or so, but our audience often say, well, a number of questions. I'm gonna split them out a little bit. So the first one is, what do I actually do in Coriolis? And I think particularly if you compare it with a lot of games nowadays, a lot of, say, Powered by the Apocalypse games or things like Blades in the Dark, it's very obvious what character you are going to create and what your action is going to be. So, for example, in Blades of the Dark, you are in a city and you are a city gang and you're doing scams. There's so much possibility. And let's start with you, Matthias, since we're here and since you asked, there's so much possibility in the world of the Third Horizon for what you might be and what you could do, that I think for some players, they don't know where to start. So how would you answer that?
I would say that Coriolis is designed to be played the way you want to play it. I mean, if it is a setting and a system, hopefully designed so that you can choose to play, intrigues or detective stories, or you want to go out into the universe and trade, or you want to be emissaries to foreign cultures, or that it is definitely not designed to be played in one single manner or in some single way. And that goes for, I would say, quite a lot of the games that we played growing up. There was no one telling us, this is a game about treasure hunting. Mm-hmm. It presented us with the tools to tell the stories that we wanted to tell. So that's the short answer. No, we will never tell you what to do in the world of Coriolis, because we feel that maybe you know what you think is fun. Right?
And Matthew, sorry, I just wanted to amplify on Matthias there, because this is an issue that with any good, in my opinion, any good, broad, and deep setting is going to have something, is going to have the incredible opportunity that the players and the GMs can make it be whatever they want it to be. On the other hand, that is a barrier to entry. Now, personally, I consider that a barrier to entry that is absolutely worth paying. That's part of the reward of this. But this is the spectrum that as a setting becomes deeper, broader, more interesting, it means that there's more ways to access that, and that more ways creates forces people to make a decision up front. Hey, what do I want to do with this? And this is, I think, something that I know this is an issue with World of Darkness. I mean, the only commonality in every game there is you're dead and you're a vampire. And even that's not really true. But this is the first thing that we always get with RuneQuest is, okay, what are you supposed to do in Glorantha? Big setting, do what you want, but that is a barrier to entry.
I mean,
I think that's why you also get the cliche of the man in black in the tavern, though. You know, that it's like that was how every game started. You know, a shadowy figure asks you to do a thing. I think almost most TTRPGs, I can't think of any unless I was running a specific module that was like, this is how the game starts. Whereas almost every video game has that by the linear nature of the storytelling.
And I think it's really important then, like, because of that barrier, that you do have that sort of session zero with your players and talk about what it is that you want as the GM and also what the players want, so that you can work out what theme you're going to go with this story, especially when you've got, like, if you want to do something that's more modular, which book do you choose? Because, like, they've all been going on so long, there's so many different editions and different books that you can have. You don't want to start off with like all the books because you have no money.
And let me also jump in. I'm sorry, I'm just filled with caffeine goodness right now.
Go ahead, no problem.
But the one of the other issues that session zero is so important about is, okay, what do I need to know about this setting? And what do I need to know about my character so that I don't sit around and spin my wheels for the first 2 or 3 sessions trying to figure out, well, you know, wandering around like a prima donna actor or actress going, what's my motivation here? You know, that's the incredible value of the zero session. And when we came up with the new rules for RuneQuest, this was something Ken Rolston, who was involved in. And Ken was involved in designing Morrowind and Oblivion and similar computer games that folk might have heard of. And Ken said, you know, in a video game, what's great is you can set things up where you as a player deliberately don't know anything. And you're, you know, this is a classic start for every one of the Morrowind games. You're a prisoner, you know nothing. And you can learn it through the game. That's hard to do with tabletop. Tabletop front loads a lot of things very early once play starts. You know, it front loads how do the mechanics work. It front loads what are important pieces of information, and it makes, in my opinion, that zero session absolutely critical.
Yeah. We'll come back to zero sessions, actually, but you've raised a lot of questions there. And I'm thinking about, you know, my own experience playing Skyrim and being very confused in the first bit where you are a prisoner, as you say, and then it gives you an opportunity to actually create your character, but you've already found just a little bit out about the world and you're ready then to say, well, this is the person I am within that. And I'm comparing that with my experience. So I've been wanting to play in Glorantha since I was about 13, but the guy who owned RuneQuest in our school group didn't like Glorantha at all, and so he created his own homebrew world. And I was kind of reading through White Dwarf and reading the stories of Griselda, thinking, well, this looks like really good fun, but we've got to do the more generic fantasy world that this guy wants to run. So I've only recently, about 3 years ago, started a campaign with Nick, who I think you know well, Jeff, Nick Brook, who's running a great campaign for us in the new edition of RuneQuest. I'm loving it. But I was in exactly that position of not knowing who my character was, even with a really wonderful character generation system that puts your character firmly in the world. It took me 2 or 3 sessions to think about, what am I doing in life? And, you know, and what I'm doing in life is I'm being quite a crap shaman because I spread my love for all the runes pretty evenly, so I'm not, none of the runes are particularly influential over me. That was a bad mechanical decision, but yeah, discovering that character in 2 or 3 sessions felt really good, and I was blessed with having Nick to take me into that world without having to read too much. But Dave, I'm just thinking about Vampire. I love V5. I was always a little bit against the earlier editions of Vampire because I felt it's too many superheroes in trench coats with katanas, and V5 felt properly monstrous for me. But there's a lot of front-end reading in that book. I started reading, the introductory fiction that they always put at the front of their books there. And then thinking, oh, there's pages and pages and pages of this. If I were a new player, should I read all of that before I start?
Absolutely not. Although I'm going to say one quick thing that I want to add on to what you were saying a second ago, and then I'm going to answer that question. I think something that works out really well too is when you're creating characters is think first about who they are. Don't think about class, race, mechanics, none of that. It's just, who is this person? They're an alcoholic sellsword. They're a priest that disappointed their father. They're a common beggar. And for new players, the thing that I usually start off by asking them is, I'm like, what's your favorite movie in this genre? Who's your favorite character in that movie? Okay. You like Neo, cool. You like Trinity, cool. You like Boromir, cool. You like Faramir, cool. You like Mr. Spock, Lieutenant Worf, whatever. And use that as the framework for how you kind of drill down for the original way to start. With Vampire in the World of Darkness, absolutely not. When I do character creation, I start with the actual quick start guide, which is on page 135 of V5, which I know that offhand because I've done this a couple of times. The thing about the V5 book is it was built to be a style guide. It was built to be beautiful, not functional. So all of that lore and stuff is beautiful and wonderful and has nothing to do with the game. I mean, it does, of course, but it is sort of the sediment out of which the game grows. I think part of the reason why it's easy for people to adapt to the World of Darkness more so than a lot of other game systems I've found is, again, it's this world. If you want to run a game, it can be set in your town. So you know all the landmarks. When you're describing what Walmart looks like, everybody understands it. When you're describing what it's like to go fight werewolves in the Rose Bowl, everybody can get their head around that. And so the onboarding process is a little bit easier. I find. And I also think one of the easiest way to onboard new players into a thing, skip a lot of the jargon. It doesn't matter. Like, I mean, I can talk to you all day about Malkavians and Ventrue and Tremere, or I can be like, these ones, traditionally in the old game, they were expressed kind of insensitively in terms of being the mentally ill ones, but they're the ones that see things differently. They're very unique. These are kind of the business vampires, the more predatory puppet master ones. These are the blood magicians. And people are like, oh, okay, I can get my head around that. And then once they sort of pick one, then you just sort of fill in more and more and more, because what Jeff said was right. A lot of it is front loaded, but I think as a DM, that is overwhelming to 99% of your players, and the 1% it's not overwhelming for will let you know, because they will show up already having read it.
Yeah, here's my character. Yes. Yeah. And I will say that that's something I've actually seen on a notice board on a forum once. And Julie, somebody said to me, if my players aren't willing to read the source material, then I don't want them to play in my game of L5R. Which I argued with at the time. I was saying, well, surely we're all of us as players discovering the worlds that you as a GM are presenting to us. Do you think, though, it's important to get some reading done in Rokugan?
For any setting, like, I don't think it's the most important thing. Like, I think it's important that maybe you understand what the setting's about, because if you go in with absolutely no idea, you might find then that the setting is not something that you were interested in playing. But if you've gone for L5R, even from the cover art, you can tell that this is going to be sort of a East Asian themed story. So that at least gives you a hint. When it comes to, like, all the lore and that. If you want to read it, like, great. But I would also be wary of that, because if you as the GM don't have all of that knowledge yourself, you haven't like completely soaked yourself in that story, you don't want to be arguing with your players because you've taken it somewhere else and they believe the canon says this. I think it's very frustrating as a GM when someone says, hey, yeah, but this clan does this, or this happened like, 10 years ago, so it can't possibly happen now. And as the GM, you have to be like, well, actually, no, this is my story. And it can make for a really uncomfortable table if someone is very, very heavy in the lore and you as the GM or other players are not, and you're here to learn together. Again, that's a sort of a session 0 thing that you have to talk about, expectations of the DM and the players.
Okay, that brings me on to a really important point, because I've actually had this as a real experience where I joined it. Well, I didn't join in the end. I didn't join this new group partly because of this one experience where I'd come away from a group where we'd enjoyed a really good little campaign of 4th edition L5R, and I said, oh, I don't mind running that in this club, and they kind of went, no, we only play 3rd edition L5R here. And not just the rule system, because I don't think there was much difference between 3rd and 4th edition.
Timeline.
Not like the big change between 5th. But the world of the 3rd edition is the one we want to play in. We don't want to deal with any of your 4th edition shit, which I didn't even realize there was a bit of a world. Anyway, that never happened. But I'm aware that there is a phrase, Jeff, that you guys have called "your Glorantha will vary."
Yes, this is because in 45 years of having the same setting and many, many different editions of the game, you can imagine the sort of fights that gamers, being very passionate about the things that they are passionate about, you can imagine the levels of fights over what is canon, what is not. Is this, hey, I bought something that came out in 1982 that contradicts what you've just said, GM, etc. So we've had a long phrase that your Glorantha will vary. And we have a corollary to that, which is canon is actually something that only the publisher and the people working for the publisher should really worry about. If you're writing for a book in RuneQuest for us, yeah, I'm going to want you to fit, your writing should fit into the canon, or we're going to have to edit it to put it in. But once that book gets taken by a game master and players, it's whatever they want to make out of it. And they should feel empowered that the version of the setting that is at that table is the one true version. And frankly, the version that they're playing and experiencing, that's more important than anything I write or anything that's out there in publication, because that's your version of it. And run with it and enjoy it. And don't worry that you've contradicted something that is out in some obscure print or publication that would have stopped you having the fun or the interest at your table. That's the real setting, is the setting that you experience.
Yeah, I can't imagine what kind of monster would flatly refuse to play an edition of a beloved game.
I like to point out to people when they say things like, okay, I was born in 84, so asking me to do some of these older editions, some of them I wasn't born in, or I was still in primary school. I am not aware of those editions because of my age. And if people want to do an edition, like if someone is very dead set on doing a 3rd edition game, then but I say to them, well, then you're going to have to run it, because I don't have the knowledge to play that one. I'll play along with you, but you're going to have to take the time and do the research and do all the planning and run the game yourself, because it's this, yeah.
Well, along the line of the research and all of this is something that often spins around. This is something that I like about World of Darkness. I remember talking with Mark about this. It's one of the great advantages Call of Cthulhu has as well, is because it's set in the real world. You know, when I'm doing something that's set in Chicago, I don't worry and figure out where every bar in Chicago is and obsess about that. We don't do this when it's the real world. We are perfectly happy going, yeah, it's Chicago. You know, there's got to be an Irish bar in this neighborhood. And, you know, 5 or 6 sessions later, I, as the GM, may have forgotten the name of the Irish bar and I give it a new name. And that fits with our own sense of reality because bars don't stay forever in a place.
No,
So
they do change their name.
We have a lower threshold for what we consider the level of research in our own real world than we do often in fantasy or science fiction settings. And it's something I don't know the answer to that, but it's a fascinating behavior. And I want to remind people that are enjoying a fantasy setting that has a lot of lore, you wouldn't worry about that level of lore that exists in our own real world. So why are you worrying about this in the, you know, in your fantasy or science fiction world? Focus on the stuff that's important for you and your players, or you and your character, and have fun with it. You don't need, it's great that all that lore exists there. I love in Call of Cthulhu that Wikipedia exists. But I don't feel compelled to drill down to the deepest level for every place I go.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about players and introducing them, you know, softly with a session 0. But this conversation is leading into a couple of questions that our Twitch people are asking, and that's very much from the GM's point of view. So let me just read out a couple of those questions. Ed Valdezo says, do you think that to run a game in a setting, a DM or GM needs to learn the whole setting and canon? And then specifically here, I did try, this is from Amethyst Talon, I did try and get into L5R a while back, but ended up never actually getting it to the table because there was so much lore and I never managed to get into it deep enough. So there's that sort of lack of confidence on GM's parts. And we've had comments like this, again, Matthias, about the Third Horizon, and frankly, there's only 1.5 books on the Third Horizon. There's not that much to read, not like all these other games.
Not yet.
Not yet.
No, but I don't know where this fear comes from. You know, being afraid to misrepresent the setting designed by a particular game studio or a particular person. But we see it a lot also when it comes to Symbaroum, of course, and some of our other brands, even if they are not as lore heavy. And I just want to emphasize what's already been said. I mean, the lore, the setting, its conflicts, its factions or whatever are tools. They are tools. The setting and the lore is a toolbox, just like the rule set, for you to use to have fun with, right? Then I fully understand that there are diehard fans of certain settings or certain games that take pride in, knowing the smallest detail about the most obscure characters in that setting, and they, of course, they can get quite agitated if we as a studio publish something that contradicts what's been said before. So I'm sure that we are all trying to avoid that from happening. But from our perspective as designers, what we first and foremost want to accomplish is to give you tools to tell, to stage interesting, engaging, entertaining game sessions. And that's what the lore is about. Some people will want to read everything, will want to study everything, will want to become experts on that setting, on that world. Others can use whatever they need to become inspired to stage those game sessions. Sorry. So, and one thing that we haven't talked about yet, but a good tip for game masters would be to find the official adventures, because those adventures, if done properly, they should tell you something about how the studio has envisioned you to play in that setting. Then when it comes to Coriolis or Glorantha and many of these other games that we are talking about now, maybe not just read the one adventure, but maybe look at several of them, and hopefully you will be able to see that, wow, you can play different kinds of games in this setting with these rules.
And most publishers do some. I mean, I know we do, and I know Paradox has with Vampire. They do a series of starter or quick start or other intro adventures, and they're there to help the GM and the players. Okay, this is how conflict resolution works in this. Here's some good examples of the sorts of themes and issues that we imagine would be cool in this. And start with those. I mean, we wrote them. Yeah. We wrote them for a reason.
Start with them in the sense that they are sounding boards for you. I mean, if you read 4 or 5 adventure synopses and you feel that none of these are the stories you want to tell, then you will probably have a better idea on what stories you do want to portray or set in motion in this setting. So the adventures is always a good place to start when it comes to answering that question, what am I supposed to do in this world?
I think a lot of it also comes down to like a fundamental question that I always get on my soapbox about, but I will only do a micro speech this time, is what's a DM even for? What's your job? And the DM's job is to elicit an emotional reaction, to give your players an opportunity to have a story that they can get lost in and have an impact in, that they can be a world that they can be at cause in. Because oftentimes in real life, we don't feel like our actions or even our inactions have an impact. So the players are at the table to experience that. And you as a DM are there to collaboratively, because it's a collaborative art, the DM, you also want an emotional reaction, but to build that together where you feel like you did something with your friends that mattered. And if you look at it like that, then the fact that you may or may not know which clan of dwarves occupied this mountain in 1976 doesn't matter. I mean, when I wrote Dungeons and Dragons: A Dark and Wish, the comic book, the reason why it's set in the Moonshine Isles is I didn't want it to be in Waterdeep or Neverwinter, Baldur's Gate, or any of those places, because I didn't want to be on the hook for 50 years of continuity. I didn't want to say this is in the basement of this building and then have the internet be like, excuse me, clearly that is not the case. I was like, you know what? No, we're going like way over here, because that wasn't what I was trying to get out of it. But to Matthias's point, some people are, but I would submit, again, those people are going to go off and read it and enjoy it on that level, and that is very valid. It's just like some people know all of the stats of their favorite football player. They know where they went to school. They know every game they played. They know how many times they scored. They know all of that. Other people just sit on the couch and turn on the game on Sunday and enjoy it, and that's cool too. And also, that is how the vast majority of people consume that entertainment.
Gotcha.
As well,
now,
I think some of the fear that you were talking about, like that, to know everything. I think some of it does come from how RPGs are portrayed now, like on streams and things like that. You see professional voice actors and actors playing these games and creating these huge worlds, and everything is very beautiful and everyone knows sort of the world and it's very thought out. And I think that can be quite intimidating if you have players that are fans of those streams who then come on and expecting you to be this person, and you're like, I can't put on accents and I don't know all the rules to these things. I'm just telling you the story that I'm telling you. I think that can be quite intimidating for a GM if they know that their players are already like big fans of worlds that are being put out streaming and on TV and things.
So,
Angela, you have an accent on right now.
Dave, right?
That's true. I can do an English London accent.
Hey, I
Well,
can't. There you go.
For what it's worth, and I don't know, I reckon I'm one of the older people on this panel here. That anxiety and fear way predates actual play. It goes. I can remember in the early days of first edition D&D, of people having anxiety of how am I supposed to do something with Castle Greyhawk without having had access to any of the Castle Greyhawk materials, which were actually kind of hard to get your hands on in the late 70s, early 80s. It's just I mean, it's a normal anxiety. It's been there always with with this sort of art form, and I think it's just important to remind GMs and players this anxiety is understandable, but really you don't need to be anxious about it. Just make it your own, and it'll probably be better than the original source material in the first place because it's your version of it and you had fun with it.
Yeah, it's performance anxiety like anything else. And let me tell you, I've got good news for you. You're not Matt Mercer. You're not Jason Carl. You can't do what they do. You can't do what I do. You can't do what any of these people here with me today can do. But none of us can do what you do. We can't tell your story. We don't have your song to sing and your unique vision of something that's going to happen in this world, which makes your way of doing things innately valid. It just so happens some of us have a camera on when we do it. That's it. That's the only difference. Yeah.
That's really good, and it does bring us into, if you like, the last phase of this. We've just got 15 minutes, so I thought I'd go round the table again and ask for each of you to give top 3 tips for players, or particularly, I think, for GMs getting into your world. So we'll go in reverse order to the way we started earlier on. Matthias, what are your top 3 tips?
I don't know. We have covered most of this already. So my first tip was view the setting and lore just like the rules as a toolbox. Okay. The second one, and we've been into that, so I won't backtrack. The second one, make the setting yours because it is. So again, we have covered that. But the third one is
I'm
more...
going to challenge you on this one, Matthias, though.
Okay.
Because this is something that we know a little bit about because of our podcast, but we do get a lot of people saying, okay, you read the core book, and obviously something special is happening in Toan, and nobody else on the panel is going to know where that is, but you know there's something mysterious happening, but you don't know what it is in the core book. And I don't, therefore, as a GM, I don't want to do anything about that because I want to know the answer to that before I move. That sort of paralysis has been mentioned, and that particular instance been mentioned a couple of times.
Well,
how do I deal with that if I'm a new GM?
Yeah, you can do one or two things. On the one hand, you can choose that you are so curious about what we would answer that question, how we would answer that question, and you wait. Otherwise, you can decide that that's a plot hook that we have planted there for you to do something cool with. If it should turn out that you do something cool with that plot hook, and then we come up with another answer on what happened or what the mystery is, go with your version of it. I mean, again, it's your world. Don't wait for us to reveal the secrets. If you feel that I want to run with this, then do it. So
cool. And as people have said here, your world is going to be better because it's the one that excites your players. It's not, you don't have to wait for the right answer, I guess, is what you're saying here. Is there a third tip before I move on? Sorry.
The third one is more specifically for the third horizon. And one thing that I think this is quite important to point out, I don't know if it's true regarding all the other settings we have on display here today, but in the Third Horizon, when you read it and when you portray it, try to understand its people and factions from their viewpoints, and not in terms of, you know, right and wrong, good and bad, true or false, or whatever. Because the setting of Third Horizon is, it's not black and white. It's not even shades of gray. It's essentially perspective, if that's a word in English, perspectivistic. You know,
We'll make it a
what?
word.
Yeah,
New
yeah,
word.
we'll make it a word. There are evil. There is good. There is truth in the world of the Third Horizon, but not in any objective sense. What is evil is primarily a question of perspective. So if you want to understand how that world operates and how it has been designed, you should try not to, you know, dive into it with a, looking after the good and the bad, the true and the false, the right and the wrong, but rather try to understand its people and factions from their own.
That is very good advice,
Yeah.
except for the Zenithian hegemony. They're just evil.
That's what. Yeah, I know more than you do, man. We can take this discussion later.
Okay, and Julie, what are your
Okay.
3 tips?
I'll try and be quick. GM tip. Don't hold yourself up against anyone else when it comes to being a GM. Don't, even if like your friends, I'm not just talking like people you see online, but even your friends who GM for you, do things in your way. I am a yes DM who plays fast and loose with the rules. If you saw of Dice and Pen on the Wizards of the Coast channel, I let my players run amok with the story. And that's fun because that's how I have fun and that's how they have fun. And so just, yeah, don't try and be someone else when you DM. Just do you. For the players, make sure you set your expectations for what you want the story to be and how you want your character to progress, and talk to your GM about it, because you're telling a story together. And if your GM isn't a mind reader, you have to be able to say to him, like, this is sort of what I've got planned. Can we work this into the story? And 9 times out of 10, your GM will be happy to work that into the story and make it work for you and everyone else at the table. Final thing is for both GMs and players, make sure you're having fun. If you're not having fun at the table, try and work out why that is. Is it the story? Is it the other players? And have that discussion. If you need to change the story, if you need to stop playing this story and start from scratch all over again because it's just not doing it for you, that's okay, as long as you're honest and with all the rest of the players. So yeah, they're my 3 tips.
And
Boom.
3 very good tips there. Dave, tell me, what are your 3 tips?
In the spirit of making the game your own and using the rules as a framework, I actually have a couple more than 3, but I'm going to do it super quick. For onboarding into the actual world of darkness, pretty much every vampire story you've seen in the last 30 years was inspired by the world of darkness. So if it involved vampires or werewolves, it's the world of darkness. So pick a thing that you like. If you're like, I really like True Blood, tell a True Blood story, tell an Underworld story, tell a interview with a vampire story, and just build on it from there. In terms of a general thing, if you're even thinking about playing, if you're thinking about starting, if you're thinking about DMing, do it. Don't let anything stop you. Do it. Pay it, and just as more of a general storytelling thing, start paying attention to what you like and what you don't like, and more importantly, why. If you saw a stream and you liked, what was it that resonated? If you played in a game and it didn't sit right, figure out what didn't resonate so you can kind of hone your own storytelling style more specifically. As a DM at your table, your only enemy is meh. If people seem zoned out or whatever, don't feel bad if you want to ban phones at your table. If people are kind of zoning out, pull them back into it. What are you doing? You tell me what happened. When we entered this room, it's a lavish ballroom. What does it look like? It's a collaborative art. Let your players participate in it, especially if you let them describe how they kill enemies. They really enjoy doing that. And last but certainly not least, when you're playing don't look at it in terms of what you can get, look at it in terms of what you can give. Because if I can tell you, one of the reasons why I've been successful as a player and I get invited to so many tables, some of which I'll be playing with some of these other people soon, I think, is because if you watch, especially in LA by night, I'm always passing it to someone else. I say something. What do you think? I agree with him. What do you think? I'm always trying to dish it off to someone else instead of just trying to grab the spotlight. Give your other players and your other people at the table an opportunity for them to be a badass. You know, when you do your attack, it's like I set him up and I knock him down towards him just to let them describe the fact that they finish him off, because they will feel so good and that will strengthen the bond between you and make the table a more exciting place overall.
Cool. Thanks very much for that one. And Jeff?
Hey, 3. And this is more focused on dealing with complex IPs like ours. First and foremost, start small and work your game up. Pick a little corner somewhere, start there. Don't try to define the entire setting right at the beginning. Just start somewhere small. And if you're playing RuneQuest or Glorantha, start with a clan or a tribe somewhere and explore the setting along with your players. The second one is, and this is a particular one for a lot of our games, ground your game in a community. You know, the characters there should be murder hobos. And actually, murder hobos are more work for the GM. It's much easier for a GM to ground your characters in a community, because that community ends up making emotional connections easier. It gives you a fixed roster of NPCs that they can bounce off and have maximum game fun with. Community. Don't let them become the wandering hobos, because that's more work for you. And the third one is, and this is a thing I use in any game, actions have consequences. And those consequences create new stories. And when you've let your players begin to snowball by doing the sort of things the players do, the setting should react against that, which creates a new story. And eventually, you have a campaign that is completely created by the deeds and actions of your players, for good or bad, and it's defining how they have been interacting with that setting. And so no matter how deep the lore is on this, you have, as a GM, you've been able to master that by letting your players do their thing and having the consequences of their thing generate the next story.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Jeff. We are pretty much out of time. I think we've answered most of the questions, but yeah, in fact, I'm not gonna say any more questions here. Instead, we've got about a minute now. Is there anybody who wants to say something about what they're doing next here at UK Games Expo? And Julie, I can see you put your hand up. You're on mute.
I am. Yes. So you can find me in 5 minutes time over on facebook.com/aconitebooks/live for our team lunchtime games. I think we're going to be playing some Railroad Inc. and chatting and being silly. And then at 1 o'clock, you will find me on the Free League YouTube channel, where I will be running Tales from the Loop, the Recycled Boy, which is the starter mystery from the starter set that is out. And yeah, if you come over there, also use the code UKGE on the Free League website and you get 10% off as well. Oh, look at that cool plug there. Yeah, find me there.
Thank you, Anne Julie. And mentioning 1 o'clock reminds me that voting ends for the UKGE Awards. And I know that 2 people on this panel are very interested about how you're going to vote for best role-playing game, because Jeff, you've got 2 games up for that. The new edition of RuneQuest in its box set and the new edition of, actually, no, not new edition. Is it?
It's edition 5. No, it's actually, I believe it's Paladin, which is the adaptation of Pendragon to the Matter of France, the Charlemagne stories.
Excellent. And Matthias, Free League have got another game in the same award.
Yeah.
And
It's
that's
called
Alien.
Alien, yeah.
So guys, people, you've got an hour to vote if you haven't already voted.
There are also some very interesting products in the other RPG categories as adventures and expansions. You should have a look at them too.
Excellent as
Right,
well. We've
Jeff?
got Berlin, the Wicked
Absolutely.
City.
I think Berlin, baby, Berlin.
Simbar. But sure.
And so, B. Dave, I guess the last word should go to you in this little bit of plugging.
Literally somewhere 7 days a week. Follow me on Twitter at @BDaveWalters. I'm doing Outbreak Undead on Tuesdays, Werewolf the Apocalypse on Fridays, D&D on Tuesday and Thursdays. Dungeons and Dragons: A Dark Wish, our big finale is next week, season 10. And yeah, follow me on Twitter. Find it all out. And I say again, if you're thinking about running games, thinking about playing games, do it. Get your friends together, grab some dice, have some fun. Tell some stories.
Just do it. That's great final words to say. And I'll hand back to you, Billy.